Hello and welcome to a VSA video. I'm Ollie O'Donnell and I'm very pleased to be joined today by Thomas Lamb, CEO of Myriad Uranium. Tom, thanks very much for joining me. How are things in the world of junior uranium?
Not too bad. Not too bad, Ollie. Good to see you. Uranium
Well,
prices moving up, and junior prices are market prices maybe aren't reflecting that yet, but they will. Yeah.
exactly, there's still plenty of time. So in our last video, we looked mostly at the mechanics of your earning deal into Copper Mountain, uranium project in Wyoming, but now you've had a few months of work getting into the project, and at the start of the year it seems like a good time to find out a bit more detail about the project and your plans for it. So perhaps you could give us a very quick reminder of the project itself.
Sure. So Myriad has a 75% earnable interest in the Copper Mountain uranium project right in the middle of Wyoming. It's in the Wind River part of Wyoming. Uh, so the project is really interesting, and it gets more and more interesting the deeper we get into it. We signed the deal, the definitive documents, October 18th, so only a few months ago, and we've been poring over the historic data that we have, that we've acquired, and we're actually getting new data all the time. So the attributes of the project are that it has seen a ton of work. We didn't know this, and our deal partners, Rush Rare Metals, didn't know this either, even when we signed the deal. Uh, it's a past producer, has a number of uranium mines that produced in the 50s and 60s. The most significant is the Arrowhead mine, produced 500,000 pounds of uranium at about 1.3%, which is a really nice grade. This is according to the historic documents, so I have to caveat everything with National Instrument 43101 caveats. Please, audience, insert those with everything I say. Historic producer. And then Union Pacific, the big railway, took over. So we're seeing this as the story unfold in the documents as we go through them. Lots of data. Union Pacific Railway took over back then in the 60s and 70s. The railways, the oil companies were doing lots of uranium exploration. They spent 74 million US dollars exploring our project throughout the 1970s. They drilled upwards of 2,000 boreholes. They developed a mine plan for our license, and they found 5 uranium deposits and drilled a lot of them, especially the central one called Canning. And they developed a mine plan for it. And in 1979, just as they were about to make a production decision, the 3 Mile Island accident happened in, I think it's Pennsylvania, and uranium prices really fell subsequent to that, and they mothballed the project. But we were on the cusp of our project. Copper Mountain was on the cusp of being a nice uranium mine, really 1979, 1980. So it's a really interesting project. It was long forgotten. One of the reasons is, well, forgotten by most. One of the reasons why it wasn't advanced during the last run in, say, 2006 to 2010 was that it was owned in a patchwork by Strathmore. You know, audience probably knows Strathmore Plus, but anyway, Strathmore, Neutron Energy, which was absorbed by Encore, and others. So it's got, and they never quite consolidated it. Well, we've thrown a blanket over it. So 2,000 drill holes, 74 million spent, historic resource estimates that Union Pacific did, very high quality, but historic, between 15 and 30 million pounds in historic resource, with exploration target slash potential, whatever they kind of called it different things back then. 2 out of the 5 deposits that they were talking about adding up to 63.8 million pounds of uranium. So those are some characteristics. It's a really nice project, and it's getting better and better as we dig into it.
And you've mentioned partly some of the history around uranium mining in Wyoming, but it's still a big part of the local economy. And Wyoming is the largest domestic producer of uranium in the US. So how important is that to being able to advance the project?
Yeah, I think it's the best uranium jurisdiction in the U.S. by a long way. I think a few years ago it produced 78% of U.S. uranium production. It was a couple of years ago, and it's produced, I think, the significant majority of all uranium produced in the U.S. Throughout the history of uranium mining in the U.S. So it's the center. It's got tons of political support, bipartisan, the state level and federally. Led by Senator John Barrasso, the senior senator in Wyoming. And it's, locally everybody's strongly in favor of uranium mining. So things like getting permits, even local city, town, county support. It's all there. It's the place. You can contrast it against neighboring states, Colorado to the south. Much more difficult to get things done there. Wyoming is very supportive of uranium.
And that's the same Senator Barrasso who is spearheading this Russian imports ban on uranium that is perhaps the next key catalyst for the sector as a whole.
That's going to kick things up a whole nother notch. There's no question the U.S. is already focusing on securing a domestic supply that can satisfy its needs just for energy security reasons, and this is another part of that, or a big part of that. The thing I like about John Barrasso, he's exactly the kind of senator that you want to see if you're looking into the United States from the outside, and then if you're an investor from the outside. He's just what you want because he's a really smart guy who's a serious guy. In the U.S., politics is kind of mixed at the moment. You've got all sorts of personalities and levels of competence, and he is really at the top. And so we're very lucky to have him as the senior senator in the state we're operating in. So he gets it, and. Yeah, really smart guy. He was an orthopedic surgeon for 24 years. I don't know if people realize that. And just a kind of a switched-on type guy. So we're lucky to have him leading the charge.
Great. Well, I think that local understanding as well is really important. You alluded to it in relation to communities. I think perhaps in this commodity more than any other, having people who understand the commodity and what it means to mine uranium living nearby is a big plus for when you go and submit your future plans for exploration and for development. So
I think it's a matter of pride locally too, throughout the state and in the areas. We've got something that is really important to the United States, and it's in Wyoming, and everybody there gets to be part of it, benefit from it, and support it. So it's that's happening there too. You can feel it.
And so with the data that you've gathered so far, what have you learned?
Yeah. Okay. Well, in situ recovery is a possibility. We see that in these old management memos. The Union Pacific and others did some studies. We don't have the studies themselves. We just have the high level reports so far. I mean, we're digging into the data that talk about pretty good ISR potential. So that's interesting. The data also is revealing more likely uranium deposits of pretty interesting grade that are in different places. Those were noted in the data for follow-up, but of course everybody ran out of runway there in 1980, or the Union Pacific, and then subsequent owners of parts of this area, did some work, but there's high grade, and we're excited to follow up on all that. Also, the data talked about high grade being linked, in a kind of a web, because it's granite that's been cracked and the fluids, etc. And understanding how these high grade areas connect, that was sort of on the to-do list too. So we get a handle on that. It's going to be very interesting. The data is giving us insight into a lot of really good insight into how these resource estimates were calculated or estimated, and that's helpful. Locations of drill holes, probes, that's being revealed, and the Union Pacific had the leading experts in the 1970s helping them, advising them, and these internal memos laid out a game plan, and that got cut off again, 1980, low uranium prices, but we have that, and it was very high-end stuff at the time. We're going to leverage all that. By the way, Neutron Energy, which was held part of the ground up until about 2011, I think 2012, did a complete review of the project as best they could with the data they had access to, and they also had absolutely top-notch people, including some that had worked on the project in the 1970s, advising them, and that data and their reports are full of really good ideas relating to canning and the surrounding deposits and how you would go about confirming the resource estimates and producing, and then also how to explore. And there's a lot of exciting exploration upside too. We're seeing that in the data.
And what does high grade mean in Wyoming? Are you getting into the percentage points like the sort of Athabasca, or is it still sort of ppm? Obviously, ISR is a slightly different beast in terms of what you need to make it viable. So, do you have a sense of?
Well, we see noted, and insert 43-101 caveats here, but in these maps. Things like I mentioned the Arrowhead mine, we have on maps and things 500,000 pounds at 1.3%. So that's an example. Some of the exploration in our area, you could see at 500 to 8,000 ppm noted, and those areas need to be followed up. And then higher grade that I have to. I don't know if I should get into because of our the way the securities regulations work, et cetera. But in different areas, there's you get up into the percentage percent and higher, but it's not like 20-30% like you see in Athabasca. We haven't seen any of that, nor into the teens. But the exciting thing is that in the 50s, 60s, 70s, the approach was to look for these bulk, low-grade deposits and mine them, because you could economically. But everybody understood a little bit, and then now more recently with new technology, new ideas, deeper understanding, that within these webs of low-grade there may be very high grade, actually, that just was you need to look for it, take a different approach. So there are comments in the data about Athabasca-like potential. We just need to take a different approach. We'll be talking about that over the coming months. What the data has revealed and these documents reveal about that. So there is Athabasca-like potential. So this is what these Neutron Energy internal memos talked about in 2006 to 2011. That is, we have in the data, and then more to come on experts, because we're talking to some who actually worked in the 1970s there and have worked on this project in the project area since, and they're exciting ideas about trying to find Athabasca-like deposits. I guess the summary would be, the big discoveries at Copper Mountain are to come. There's good potential for exciting discoveries there.
And as an exploration license area, how do you sit in terms of proximity to road, rail, water, those types of things? As a sort of brownfield project, you're having to look slightly further ahead down the line rather than just drilling.
Yeah, well, there are creeks and streams around, and there's a lot of aquifer water around, a ton. Road access is very good. There's I don't know if you call it a highway, but it's a sealed, nice road. Is I'd say 25 minutes away via a dirt road. So you pull off the nice paved road that's 30 minutes from a main town, Riverton, and then you go up a dirt road and through some ranch land, and you're there at our project. The access is great. So road access. And there's water around, and there are virtually no people. Some ranchers every few miles. So we've lucked out in terms of location. It's not in the mountains. It's in the rolling foothills before the mountains, and it's a good spot.
Excellent. And you raised a small amount of money before the end of 2023. So what is that going to allow you to go and do this year in terms of work and advancing the project?
We have a low burn, and so we raised $761,000 approximately just in December, and we had about $300,000 in the bank at the time. So that gives yours an idea of our cash position. Our burn is low, and what we're doing is we're going to go through the data starting next week, and give it I myself, by the way, I'm a kind of a lawyer finance person with a lot of experience in mining, but I'm not a technical person, just in case so your viewers know. But our technical team is going to start poring over the documents with focus next week, digitizing, and we're going to come up with a strategy for 2024. So we can do a lot of things very cheaply over the next 6 months. Figure out whether we can bring our historic resource estimates current, just with the data we have. What additional data we need? What additional assurance do we need? That twin a few holes, put our own probes down some old holes, uncap them, etc., and then surface work that's required. So the money will go a long way. It's not expensive to do everything except for the drilling. Once we come up with our plan or confirm our plan over the next few months, we will see about a drill budget, and then if we need to, we'll raise more money. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. We have, maybe we'll target some areas to acquire. That goes to this hub spoke theme in terms of uranium production in Wyoming. Central area with mine units around, so there may be some acquisitions we do, and then we should have. If we don't drill, we'll have we've got a fair amount of money.
Excellent. So some catalysts to come, getting you to drill ready stage, and following a lot of what other peers in Wyoming have done, because actually there's a lot of sort of synergy, I think, in the strategy that you're following here in Wyoming as to what was going on in Niger, where you're entering a well-established jurisdiction with somewhat de-risked exploration license areas due to the data that you've been able to inherit.
That's right. Yeah, we as management, you wish you could tell everybody and help them and have them understand what you've got here. This is not this is not a greenfield exploration situation, and it's not even an early stage exploration where these companies are out, trying to figure out if there's uranium there. In Niger, there's lots of it. In Wyoming, where we are, there were at least three producing uranium mines on our property, 6 identified deposits, plus 2,000 drill holes. There's tons of uranium there. It has the potential to be one of the largest projects in Wyoming, and so it's really, 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 really great. I can't wait for people to do the math. You can multiply likely pounds times the uranium price, subtract the cost, and you end up with a back of the envelope NPV. If you want to take that approach, you can do it yourself kind of thing. Hopefully that eventually people do that and we get re-rated. So yeah, this is not a sort of an early stage exploration type situation.
And is there any update in Niger? What's happened in the last few months? Obviously, the project's on hold for the time being.
We every few weeks we think things are going to kind of unlock, and that we'll be able to get back to work. So far, things are still stuck. But they're working it out. So we're not doing any work there. We're paused along with everybody else in the sector. A few companies are doing what they really have to do there as part of their, for example, GoVX and Global Atomic have things they absolutely must do, and so they're doing them. We renewed our project. We paid our fees, or we transferred the renewal money to Niger in, I think, around October or November for another year. So this is our 1,822 square kilometers we've renewed. So we're waiting for things to sort themselves out. Lots of talk of borders opening, everybody agreeing on a transition plan to democracy again. So optimistic. But I think and maybe a lot of your viewers know, there have been lots of coups in Niger over the last 14 years, and several anyway, and they things are frozen for a bit, and then they reopen. Everybody gets back to business. So, hoping that happens soon. It's been, January? So I don't know. It's been since July. So 6 months to a year. Hopefully things we'll be back at it. Lots of interest in our Niger projects, by the way. We've added to the cap table one of the world's leading uranium traders, top 5 global uranium trader, came in a significant way in our financing because they've looked at what we really have and see our potential. So they like Niger and they like Wyoming, and they're smart guys. And so just when things unlock in Niger, we'll be off to the races.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like on both fronts there's a lot to look forward to. So, Tom, thanks very much for speaking to me and giving us an update. We'll look forward to the next one.
Thanks, Ollie. Always good to speak with you.